That's fun. All right. Bye. Okay, Ms. Tinker, can you hear me all right now?
Hello, yes, I can hear you really well.
Okay, good. Well, I had my laptop in here and the computer, so we were trying to figure out which one to mute and not mute.
Don't worry, it's okay. I might have some weird noises on my end too, but because there's some drilling going on in my apartment building.
All right, so this is my 11th grade AP English history course. I also have a teacher that is connected to our Zoom that is showing it to her American history classes too. So we have multiple classes on here. Some of our kids, as you can see, were in person. So we've moved to the library so that there's a camera here we can spread out. And then I also have students that are logged on from home that are our virtual students from the class. So
that's great.
A little bit of everywhere right now.
Great.
But so guys, I've introduced us. We are 11th grade students from Blytheville High School. So we're in the northeast corner of Arkansas there. And this is Beth Tinker, and I'll let her introduce her.
Hello, it's so good to be with all of you. What a time it is. What interesting times and important times you're living in. Yeah, it's all about kids' rights and kids' voices, young people's voices. You, my favorite subject, you. I'm actually a nurse, and most of my career I worked as a trauma nurse with teenagers. Trauma nurse, that's like, you know, students who get in car crashes and get shot and things like that. So yeah, I'm so glad that you're all healthy. And
are your speakers on?
But I figured out that it's actually good for your health to speak up and stand up about things also, and to use your First Amendment rights. So that's when I started talking more with students.
Where's your laptop muted?
So I'm going to, let's see here. I'll show you a few slides. I'm going to try to keep you all awake here if I can. Okay, wait a second. All right. Ms. Brasfield, can you allow screen sharing, or if it's not possible, it's okay?
Yeah, it should be.
Okay. If so, I have some photos I can show you all as we talk about the First Amendment and how important it is for any group that wants to advocate for your own interests, especially young people, standing up for your own interests.
All right, I'm trying to see how to change you to where you can screen share.
Screen sharing, okay. Otherwise, well, no. So anyway, let's just have a review here. The First Amendment is only 2% of Americans know the rights of the First Amendment. So does anybody know one of the rights of the First Amendment? Freedom of speech, yay, free speech. How about free press? Free press is kind of important. If you're gonna change things, make them better, you kind of need to know what's going on. So the free press, free speech, freedom of religion, to have your own beliefs, and freedom of assembly, and freedom of petition for grievances. And so only 2% of Americans know all those rights. So yeah, you can check out your family and see if they know them later. And the rights of the First Amendment. Let's see if we can, oh yeah, oh how exciting. Okay, wait a second.
Allowed for screen share, so you should be able to.
Yeah, I got it, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the rights of the First Amendment. Oh wait, sorry. Don't look everybody. Whoops. Okay, the beginning. Okay, the First Amendment and youth voices, and how youth use the First Amendment to speak up for your rights. So I've been traveling around the country. I left my hospital, and now I've been speaking to students like all of you about your rights and how you can use them and how you are using. And I want to hear how you all are already using these rights. So think about how you're using your right to free speech or assembly or press to stand up for something that's important to you and that will make our country and our world better. Okay, so let's see. Yes, kids are the next great leap for democracy. When you speak up and put your ideas in there, it's so important for the society, and it really takes things forward because you have such great creativity and imagination and energy, and that's very, very important to any society that wants to be better. And we definitely want to be better. We're not going to settle for the way things are, right, everybody? Right. So here's some kids. I'll just tell you a few examples of students speaking up for their rights. Here's some kids in Wisconsin. They had a very strict dress code, but the principal said, well, we can't enforce masks. But the girls said, well, wait a minute, you enforce us not being able to wear spaghetti straps on our clothes. So they started a petition, it's in the First Amendment, and they got 1,500 signatures. And they won, and now masks are required, just like all of you. I'm glad to see you wearing your masks. Yes, I'm a nurse. I want you to be safe. Here's some students at the State University, college students, also speaking up for their rights about masks and saying we should have some protection against COVID. Here's students that are speaking up about the environment, and they have a lawsuit. Here's them at the Supreme Court. Their lawsuit is against the Environmental Protection Agency. Their kids, even some middle school kids and high school kids started this about 5 years ago. Say, hey, Environmental Protection Agency, you're supposed to be protecting our air and water, and you're not doing a very good job of it. So they started a lawsuit. Here's some students speaking up against racism. And these students are in Iowa. I was speaking with students in Iowa yesterday, and so I showed them a couple examples of kids there who were speaking up against racism and Black Lives Matter rallies. Here's a girl in Arkansas a couple years ago, Beyonce Foster. She was leading a March for Our Lives there at her school in Conway County against gun violence and for safer gun laws. So yes, students speaking up all over the country, and I know a lot of you are as well. I didn't know about all this, the First Amendment and everything when I was growing up. Here's me and my sister in Iowa. We were just ordinary kids. Here's a birthday cake my sister made for me. My sister's on the left, that's me. My dad was a preacher, and he taught us about, you know, these values of love and understanding, and then in school we learned about democracy and equality and justice. But the problem is adults don't always act out these values. And so it's up to kids to notice and to stand up and say, wait a minute, you talk about love, you talk about understanding, but where is it in our society? Where's the equality? Where's the justice that you've taught us about? That's one of the great powers of young people, to see the ideals and to then see what we really have in reality and try to get us to where we should be. I saw some kids on the news when I was 10 years old, and they were trying to get us to where we should be. They were in Birmingham, Alabama, and it was called the Birmingham Children's Crusade. These kids were just amazing. They were the Black Lives Matter of 1963, of my time. And they were protesting racism in Birmingham, where Martin Luther King was already in jail for protesting racism. These kids, they were so strong and brave, and when they did this, about 2,000 Black kids in Birmingham that year got arrested, and the police put the water hoses from the fire department on them, attacked them with dogs, German Shepherd dogs. And I know a lot of you have heard about this, these amazing kids. Martin Luther King said that this was the turning point of the civil rights movement, when these young people stood up and spoke up. It's the power of young people. But there were some people that didn't like that very much. Yes, they were white supremacists, the KKK, and they had a flag to represent their views, the Confederate flag. So the KKK and the white supremacists, the white nationalists, they hatched a plan to punish the children for speaking up for equality and justice. And what they did, they put a bomb in the headquarters of the children. It was the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, right on Sunday morning, knowing the kids would be in Sunday school. And I hope you've heard about this, because it was so important in the history of our country, what these kids did and how the KKK punished them by bombing their church. And here's the church that Sunday morning, September 15th, 1963. I had just turned 11 years old when someone came by our picnic to tell us what had happened to those brave kids that I had seen on the news who stood up for democracy.
3 girls in the basement area that died.
Yeah, 4 little girls were killed. Denise, Cynthia, Addie Mae, and Carol. And all of us kids were so sad about that. And there's a writer named James Baldwin who's so amazing, and I know a lot of you have heard of James Baldwin. He put out a letter saying what we should do is we should have memorial services all over the country for these girls who were so brave, and we should wear black armbands, because the armband is a symbol of mourning and of being sad. And people have been wearing black armbands when someone died for many, many years through our history. So that's exactly what happened in Des Moines. We wore black armbands to mourn for the little girls at the church who had been killed by the white supremacists. And that's me in the middle, and my sister Bonnie and Hope, they're over to the right. And then on the left, our friends Linda and Phyllis at the memorial service in Des Moines after the girls were killed in the Birmingham church bombing, September 15th, 1963. So this is how I grew up in these mighty times, and you all are living again in mighty times. As we know, these issues are still with us, and we still have the white nationalists with us, and it's all going on at the same time. So now's the time when students are standing up again and speaking up. The next summer was also amazing, 1964, Freedom Summer. These are young people training in Ohio how to stand up to the KKK. They went to Mississippi that year to help register African-American voters. 700 college students came from all over the country for Freedom Summer that summer. And as soon as they got there, 3 of them were murdered. Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner by the KKK. And also the sheriff was in collusion with this. So that's fall, some high school students, black high school students, wore buttons to school that said "One Man, One Vote." SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. That was the organization that called the students to help register the voters. All of your rights in public school today go back to these times, to these brave African-American students and white students who joined together to stand up for racial justice. So when the students wore those buttons to school then that fall of 1964, they were told they could not do that. And a lawsuit started working its way through the courts. The name of the case was Burnside versus Byers. But on August 4th, when the FBI found the bodies of Goodman, Chaney, and Schwerner, on that very same day, in those mighty times, off the coast of Vietnam, a US Navy ship claimed it had been attacked. August 1964, the same day that the bodies were found. Yes, they had been murdered by the Ku Klux Klan. So then the US Congress voted almost unanimously to send more and more troops to Vietnam. It was called the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. And that ship, it's turned out, was not actually attacked, but it didn't stop the Congress from voting on that resolution and start to send thousands more troops to Vietnam. And I know a lot of you have family who are in Vietnam. It's a very emotional subject, but this case is really about emotional issues and controversial issues and how we have to be willing to talk about these things if we're going to have a democracy and if we're going to have education. But it's a matter of how to talk about these things, that we need to have respect. And so that's really what this case is about. It's about the issues that young people, that you find yourselves facing in our world today, and having strong feelings about those issues and wanting to take action. So that happened in 1964, and we saw all this. Oh, by the way, these are the guys that killed Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman at their trial. They weren't worried in the slightest. They knew that the whole jury was going to be white. Because as soon as a black, well, first of all, most black people couldn't even register to vote because of the reign of terror that these guys had unleashed and had been doing throughout. And so the juries would be all white and the judge would be white. And they knew there was nothing that was going to happen to them for murdering these young people who stood up for democracy. That's where we're coming from. And that's what we need to deal with. It's reality. So yeah, these guys murdered those three, and then the very same day, the Gulf of the ship was off of Vietnam, claimed it was attacked. So by Christmas of 1965, when I was 13 years old, here's what we saw in the news all the time. War, war, war in Vietnam. It was so upsetting, so sad, so emotional. And kids from our neighborhood were being sent to Vietnam now. So some of the kids at the high school had an idea, what if we wear black armbands again? This time we wear them to school that Christmas to mourn for the dead on both sides of the war and to call for a Christmas truce in the war so that the adults could try to negotiate and stop killing all the time. So that's what happened, and I decided I would try to do that too, although I was a very shy person. I was really scared. But here's me and my brother, John. John was in 10th grade. I was in 8th grade that Christmas. I was 13. And we didn't have the peace signs on our armbands yet, but we painted them on later. We decided we would wear black armbands to school to stand up for peace. My dad was a preacher, but now we were also involved with the Quakers, which is a religion that's all about peace. So that's how we were raised. And we decided to speak up for our faith and to put it into action. Here's Chris Eckhart. He was also one of the kids who wore the armbands. Chris was also in 10th grade. There were about 8 kids who decided to wear the black armbands to school in Des Moines, Iowa. And when the principals heard about it, they made a rule against wearing armbands, saying that it was too controversial and it would bring up too many feelings among people whose kids had been sent to Vietnam, and that we shouldn't talk about such things in school. So when I went to school, I was really nervous and scared, and I got sent to the office and I was suspended. And here's my suspension notice, which I found a few years ago in a box. But I was so scared when I went to school that day, and I just felt like I should speak up about it, but I wasn't really, so sure. My dad had told us kids not to wear the black armbands because it was against the rules, but kids are very persuasive. And we knew something about our dad. We knew that he had always taught us to speak up for our conscience. And so we told him, Dad, you told us that we should stand up for what we believe in. And eventually he came to support us also. Some people got really, really mad when we did this. And this is a postcard that we got. And that red thing was saying that we're communists. My mom would say, we're not communists, we're Methodists. And they threw red paint at our house, and they threatened to blow up our house. It was really crazy considering that we were just speaking up for peace at Christmas time. But a group called the American Civil Liberties Union offered to help us, the ACLU. They heard about what had happened, and they're all about speaking up for the First Amendment. This is their 100th anniversary right now this year. So they offered to help, and the Iowa Civil Liberties Union came and offered to get us a lawyer. But they said, first you have to go back to the school board and try to change their mind, which we did, but they wouldn't change their mind, so it went to court. And we lost at the district level and we lost at the appeals level. Well, I thought we would lose the whole thing because I thought nobody's going to think that kids are right, these big important judges. But luckily, we had people on the Supreme Court like Thurgood Marshall and William Brennan and Abe Ford as justices on the court who did think kids should have rights. And so they ruled by 7-2 that you should have a right to express yourselves in public schools and that your rights don't end when you get in the school. And one of my favorite parts of the ruling is that kids are persons with the rights and responsibilities of persons. And they said there's 2 things you cannot do with your free speech rights. Number 1, substantially disrupt school. Number 2, impinge on the rights of others. And for that standard, they referred to the Mississippi kids in 1964 who had protested the murders of Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman because they had won their case not too long before this happened. So they talked about the Burnside case in the ruling. So I had no idea this case was so important. I grew up, I became a nurse working with kids. Here's me at my hospital when I was working on the trauma unit at Prince George's Hospital recently. And I realized that kids really aren't getting a fair deal in our society. Children and teenagers are the most likely to live in poverty, for example. The air and water aren't clean. There's a high chance of kids being shot and injured in our society because of all the guns. And I started thinking that kids really need to speak up for yourselves. And that's why I started traveling all around the country, speaking with kids and telling about the First Amendment and telling about how young people can use it to make things better for yourselves. And here's one of my last stops last year was at my old junior high school, my middle school, where I got suspended. But this year I was invited back by the principal and we had a big assembly and they even dedicated a locker to me. So I have my own locker now at Warren Harding Junior High School. So that's the story about how young people can stand up and speak up, and how the Supreme Court said that, yes, you do have your rights to the First Amendment. Now I'm going to stop and we're going to open it up for all of you. So you can tell me what you think and you can ask questions or comments and tell me some of the things you're speaking up about. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, comments.
I enjoyed it.
Enjoyed it?
Yes, they said they enjoyed it.
What did you like about it? What did you like about it?
I like how you told us about how, just telling us about what you went through. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, what we went through, yes.
I like what you said about how if you don't know something, you're not going to be able to change it. So I feel like we should look more into the things in our history that we don't know, like
Yeah,
how it can change over time.
things in history that we don't know and changing things, yeah. It's important to know these things. What are some, what's something that you all are speaking up about?
Do you see in today's world, global or national, that needs to be spoke up about?
Ill-Charity. What is it? I promise I'm going to say it the wrong way. It's the LGBTQ community. That's
all right.
what it's supposed to look about. Like, that's nation, though.
All right, so nationwide with the LGBTQ group, what else?
LGBTQ.
Police brutality.
Police brutality.
Police brutality, speaking up against police brutality. Yeah, that's, how are you doing that? How?
How can you?
Well, I really can't say. What I do know is with social media, it makes a lot of stuff like more publicized. Like, for instance, videos that's posted on all gun brutality, and then what they do for it is the protest that I know of.
Yeah.
And
Knowing the news, watching videos, hearing things.
Yeah, so social media can put it out in the public so people are more aware now.
Yeah. Put it out there, make it more public. Definitely. What about voting? Do you think it matters? Like, I mean, who's on the legislature? Who's on the city council? These things matter too.
that matters.
Yeah.
We have an election coming next month. Y'all know who your representative is for the state? Monty Hodges, yes.
Oh, you know, that's great. You're
Yeah.
doing a lot better than a lot of adults.
Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. His is the only one that's contested right now. And
Uh-huh.
in Tobar, it,
Yeah, how many times have you started?
I think,
I know it's been a long time.
yeah. Well, that's for US. For state, their term limits are different. And then, but his right now for our area is the only one that's contested. The state senators, which for our district is Dave Wallace, but he doesn't have a competitor. And then John Ray is also the representative, but he does Gosnell and like Manila and stuff, but he doesn't have a competitor. Hodges is the only one that does have a competitor right now.
Yeah. I mean, maybe these, some other students, they had like a candidates forum where they asked the candidates, what is your position on the issues that kids cared about, like police brutality or money for schools or the different issues? Do you think you could ask the candidates those questions? Which candidate do you think you would support right now?
Hodges or Tobar?
Hodges, I don't know nothing about Tobar.
Well, I know. See, that would be interesting. You could you could do a school report on those two and say which you think are better for kids.
Yeah. So y'all could host a forum. We could do it virtual so it's safe. But y'all could reach out to Monty and also to Tobar to see if they would come and answer questions that y'all have.
Yeah, I like that idea, Mrs. Brassfield. What do you think? Who would like to do that?
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, all right. So this is good.
What is it? What are their duties? Like, what do they do?
They make the laws for Arkansas. They help write laws for Arkansas.
Are you serious?
Like for the state, yes.
I didn't know that.
They are our state legislators, work in the legislation with the governor, Governor Hutchinson, and they are the ones that help write laws. So they are on different committees, and then the laws start in the committee, and then once it goes through the committee and it passes, it will go either to the House floor or the Senate, and then it will switch sides to go to the other side, and they argue it and pass it till it gets to the governor. So they are the ones that help write our laws for our state.
That's big, y'all.
Yeah, that would be great. So do it. I'll come to the forum and I want to hear what happens. Yeah, then I could tell other students all over the country about what you all did. Yeah, that'd be so cool. In fact, come on. Okay, so who's gonna do it? Yeah. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, great. So what, could this be a school project, Mrs. Brassfield?
Yes.
Yes, we have
Yeah.
me and Miss Haynes, which is the other teacher that's on here. We have
Yes.
sponsor the ROCAPA National Social Study Honor Society, and many of these students are on that society, and so we could get them together to host it.
Wow, that would be so cool. And then we could like feature it for other kids and tell other kids what you did. You know, I live in Washington, D.C., where I am right now. And students here are doing that for the candidates who are running for the for the city council. They're going to interview the candidate and ask his views on, you know, how to decrease gun violence. How about the environment? Well, should the students have a voting member on the school board? You might want to check out, is there a student member on your school board? And do they have a vote?
No, we do not here.
You do not? There's something like 13,000 school boards in the United States, and there's only about 3 that have students with a vote on them.
We did used to have a student voice committee.
Yeah.
Would meet with the principals and stuff to discuss things that students wanted for their school. And one year we had a couple of the members that actually got to sit in on a couple of interviews for new teachers. And
Oh, that's great.
so
yeah.
they didn't decide to hire or not, but they were able
Right.
to provide input and ask those potential teachers questions during the interview.
That is so great. Do you think that you students should have us, you know, be able to interview new teachers or new principal or things like that?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah. There were these kids in Kansas. They had a school newspaper. So the school journalists, they wrote an article about the new principal. And they investigated and they found out that the principal had lied about their college background.
That's probably not on this.
Anyone in here on journalism? No.
Do you have a school paper there though?
Yes, we do.
Oh, that's great. So the school paper could cover your youth forum for the candidates.
Yes, they could.
That would be fabulous.
I have a couple questions from the other class that is joining us.
Great.
One question is a simple one, and being a lady, I don't know if you'll answer it, but she wants to know, how old are you?
How old am I? I am 68.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the other question that student has is, how exactly did you get justice for the people that were killed?
Justice for the people who were killed, Cheney, Schwerner, and, well, there were 2 things. Okay, first of all, the Birmingham children. This case went on and on for many years, and the lawyer who prosecuted the killers, he's amazing, and his name is Doug Jones. And he finally got the guys convicted, and guess what? He's a senator right now from Alabama. His name is Doug Jones. He was the lawyer for the Birmingham children who were murdered. And he prosecuted the killers of the Birmingham children and finally won. And he just wrote a book about it a couple of years ago. It's really amazing. His name is Doug Jones. That would be a great school project too. Okay, now the Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman murders, those guys were finally prosecuted too, and even the sheriff was prosecuted because he had been in on it also. Nobody ever really did much jail time though on that. Yeah.
Another question is, how did you feel when the kids threatened you and your family? And then how did you stay strong during that scary time?
You know, it's really strange, but it wasn't kids who threatened us. It was adults. We really didn't get much, you know, threats or anything from kids. Mostly it was the adults, and that was really strange because I was just thinking, wait a minute, I thought you adults were supposed to be about peace. And you know how you send out those little Christmas cards at Christmas with glittery little pictures that say peace on earth and stuff like that? And I was like, we're just trying to do what you say you want, which is peace and love and understanding and all those things. So yeah, it was really strange when the adults, one time I was going off to school after we went back to school in January. We couldn't wear our armbands anymore. So we just decided to wear black clothes for the rest of the year. There's always a way to get your message across. Okay, so I was going off to school one day and the phone rang. I picked up the phone and this lady said, "Is this Mary Beth?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I'm gonna kill you." And I was just like, oh my God, these people are crazy. She was threatening to kill me. Why? Because I stood up for peace in Vietnam in the war. So yeah, it was really strange how some adults, not all adults, some adults were nice about it. And especially some of the adults that were the justices at the Supreme Court. Like, here's one of them. Can you see this?
Yes.
That's Marshall.
Yes.
Yeah, Thurgood Marshall. So wait, his wife, Sissy Marshall, gave me a pin.
Yep.
Of Thurgood Marshall, because she was part of this youth activist program that I was part of. And we always used to sit together. And I loved talking to her. She's so great. She would tell me little stories about Thurgood Marshall and everything. Yeah, it was so cool. So yeah, that's another good school report. The life of Thurgood Marshall. And there's a movie, I think there's a couple movies about Thurgood Marshall. He was so amazing. And you know, he actually sued the state of Maryland because his mother got paid less to be a teacher because she was Black. So as soon as he got out of law school at Howard University, he sued the state of Maryland. And in the end, you see how things can change. He changed things. Guess what? The state of Maryland named an airport after him in Baltimore. Yeah, after he had sued them. So yeah, it's called the Thurgood Marshall Airport. I used to always love to go to that airport because I would think of Thurgood Marshall, my hero. Yeah, he was pretty amazing. He loved kids. He wanted you to have your rights and he wanted you to speak up and stand up. Yeah.
Iowa. A student asked if you have a book out that you've written, and if not,
well, I have a coloring book. It's got true stories of kids. Maybe you all be in it. Do your candidates forum, and I'll make a page of the coloring book about you. I'll send you some coloring books. It's got true stories of kids who use various ones of the First Amendment to speak up and stand up. Oh, by the way, when you have your candidates forum, what ones of the First Amendment, what rights will you be using?
freedom of what? Freedom of the press?
Freedom of the press, yes, yes. What else?
So the press are allowed to print what they want.
Freedom of, what else? How about freedom of speech?
Yes.
Freedom of, what else?
Freedom of assembly, right?
Freedom of assembly, good. That's great. Yeah, you could do it.
All right.
So I'll send some coloring books. I'll send some to Mrs. Brassfield and she can pass them around.
Okay, there's another couple of questions around this topic. They want to know if you ever felt scared that you could get hurt for helping African Americans, and then how did your family help or deal with the violence that was coming with it, and did you receive any kind of bad treatment for helping African Americans?
I felt scared most of the time because I was young. I was one of the youngest of 6 children, so I was really shy and I was kind of fearful in general. So yeah, especially when I learned about how the Black kids were being attacked just for speaking up against racism and for equality, I felt really scared. And but being a white person, I had what you would call a privilege. And so I wasn't in as much danger. And I'm very much aware of how white people need to speak up against racism, because we have it easier, because we have had these advantages from the society that has been racist. So yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this. What do you all think about that? Do you feel people have a responsibility to speak up?
Yeah, we people, how we gonna know change
What?
She said that they are the people. How will things change if they don't speak up?
Exactly. Things won't change if people don't speak up. So that's what it takes. But you know what I found out? It's actually a good way of life. And sometimes it's even kind of fun to speak up about things you care about. Like I ask kids all over the country, well, how did you feel when you had that rally? Or how did you feel when you went to the school board, or when you had the candidates forum? And all the kids always say, oh, it was great. It was really great. It feels good.
There's a question on how strict were gun laws during your time?
How strict were gun laws? Well, they were stricter. I mean, I've spent a lot of time as a nurse working to prevent violence, because nurses, we like to prevent problems. Don't wait till somebody's shot. Don't wait till there's a car crash. We want to prevent the problem in the first place. So there's been a huge explosion of guns in the last 30 years, 40 years in the country. And the laws have gotten, and the problem is a lot of people make money off of that. That's what really makes me mad, is that some people make a lot of money off of the suffering of teenagers who get shot. And school shootings are one thing. Last year was the anniversary of the Tinker ruling. It was the 50-year anniversary. 1969 is when we won at the Supreme Court. Okay, to celebrate, I went to Iowa. I showed you the picture of the locker. So guess who came up to help us celebrate? Students, journalism students from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. The ones who were shot at in Parkland, they came up to help us celebrate, because they said kids need rights and kids need to speak up about these things. So there's somebody who made a film about the students at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and I'm in it too, and it's going to start showing, and you can watch it for free. And I'm going to send you all the link, and you can watch it about how they spoke up about gun violence, and how students all over the country have been speaking up about gun violence. Because we have more people shot in our country than any country on earth. There were more people shot, just even kids and families, than in all wars last year, just shot in the United States.
We have a small issue with gun violence here in our own town.
You have had? Like, what happened?
Wow.
What?
She said they wild.
Wow.
In the past several years, we've actually lost a couple students through gun violence.
Oh no, that is sad. Yeah, that's true here in DC too. I try to follow every kid who's, their story, who's been shot. Students here are speaking up against gun violence. But what I've learned as a nurse, this is so interesting. And also I have a background in public health. It's how to have healthier communities that don't have violence, because we have to look at gun violence as a health problem. So when you look at it as a health problem, guess what decreases gun violence? As it turns out, it's racial equality and economic equality. So when you have communities that are more, where people are doing better economically and they're having a fair society, it helps decrease gun violence. So yeah, when you look at policies that your politicians you know, are talking about what are their policies, how are their policies going to increase racial and economic equality? That's what we need to know. What is it that they are going to do? Like, you might want to check and see what is the average amount of wealth that white families have in your town compared to black families. In Washington, D.C., get this, you won't believe it, it's 80 times different. In our nation's capital, white families have an average of 80 times the wealth than black families. Okay, that's the opposite of what you want to decrease gun violence. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Like, black families in DC have an average of $3,000 total, with houses and everything, cars, everything. Okay, so white families have an average of $240,000. Now, that's not fair. This is what has to change, and all of this helps decrease gun violence and make communities safer also. It's all related. Women's rights, African American rights, economic equality, racial equality, it's all interconnected. And kids all over the country, I can tell you about second graders, fifth graders who are speaking up about these issues and doing things, starting clubs. There's a high school that I know in Maryland, real close to here, they started a club called One Blair, where they meet every week and talk about these issues and what they can do and how they can take action.
Would that be something y'all could do?
Oh yeah, do you have a club? Wait, what's the Interact Club?
Interact is the student version of the Rotary Club,
Yeah?
Rotary International. And so Interact is the students from that club.
Yeah.
And their focus is community service.
Yeah. Well, that's something maybe the Interact Club could take up and see, like, what is the situation with economic inequality and racial inequality right there, and how can we address it through policies and things like that, council policies. Yeah, the Interact Club. It does make life more interesting when you think about these things and take action. And as I found out, it's a good way of life, and it's actually good for your health. It's good for your physical health. When I was in nursing school, I learned that health is a lot more than physical health. It's also social health, mental health, and even spiritual health. And so I've learned that when you stand up to make a better world for equality and justice, it's good for your health. And sometimes it's even fun. I can tell you about some kids, like these kids in Rhode Island, they got really tired of all the tests all the time. So they dressed up like guinea pigs and rats. And they went off to the state legislature and campaigned against so many tests all the time. Yeah.
So if there's anything that you can discuss.
I'm really sorry about the students who were shot. And they were killed also at your school?
Yes.
Was this last year?
Yeah. Yeah, one was last year, one was about 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it's happened more than once, but it's from violence out in the communities.
That's terrible. So how do you all feel about that? Do you think about it a lot? And when you walk home to school, are you worried?
I think it's just something we got used to.
Kind of like used to it?
Yeah, which is kind of sad in its own.
Yeah, that is kind of sad, but you have to get used to it.
But yeah, it was in their community, so we didn't have a school shooting in the school itself.
Yeah.
But it's happening in the communities that they live in.
Well, yeah, most shootings take place outside of school. Most shootings. So there's a group called Every Town for Gun Safety that's working to decrease gun violence. And they have two groups that are part of them. One's called Moms Demand Action, which I'm a member of. And another one is called Students Demand Action. So you can check it out, Students Demand Action. It's a group to work on decreasing gun violence by having safer gun laws and all the things that decrease gun violence. Yeah.
Y'all have any other questions?
Questions or comments?
I am recording this so that we can show other classes the same information that you're giving us. Would it
Good.
all right if I published it on YouTube for the school website or anything?
Sure, of course.
Okay.
It's good to be with
Permission
all
or
of you.
like that.
Yes, you have permission. It's good to be with all of you in Blytheville. And I know there are so many things, so many issues going on, and I'm just so glad that young people are joining in and speaking up, and that you're learning about the Constitution and about government and how it works, and the First Amendment, and about how elections work. Yeah, so important. Because when you don't have a say about these things, it really hurts everyone. When things are good for kids, as it turns out, things are better for everyone.
All right, we're coming up on the end of your hour that you said would take. I don't know if there's any more. I don't want to take more of your time than you were expecting. So.
No, thanks everyone. It was so good to be with all of you. Does anyone else have any other comment about things you're speaking up about or questions?
Okay.
No, I don't think they do at this time, but I think they've gotten a lot to think about now.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. All right, great. Well, write to me anytime. It's tinkertour@gmail.com, and I'll write to you back. And thanks everyone for inviting me. And you take care, be safe, take care of yourselves, and stand up for your rights. Bye, everybody.
Hey, thank you so much.
Bye. Thanks for inviting me. Bye.